give it a... So maybe as we're waiting for people to flow in, we can do a quick introduction about ourselves before we start the panel. Like, I can start first. I'm a venture capitalist for the past 10 years, founding in some sports-related businesses over the past few, and invested in some tech that's been related in tech and sports the past few years as well in our portfolio. And so have a panel of experts today that are way deeper in knowledge and experience in these fields than I am. So maybe Masaaki, a quick intro.
Thanks, Alan. My name is Masaaki. I'm a sports investor. I've spent 7 years at the NBA working in the global strategy group. Before that, I spent 14 years in the M&A group at Goldman Sachs in New York and Hong Kong. Currently investing in the sports ecosystem in Asia Pacific. I sit on the board of K&Q Technologies, which is a sports commentary AI tech business, as well as I'm on the board of Asian University Basketball League, which is a recently launched college Asia Pac basketball league that is gonna that strives to be the next kind of NCAA March Madness asset for Asia Pac universities. It launched last month with the inaugural tournament and funded by Joe Tsai.
Yeah, I'm Kit Low. I've been doing this probably about 25 years of my life, spanning from sports to entertainment, from investing, advising, to operating as an operator. We recently closed another company that focused in sports and entertainment in Hong Kong, backed by the Hong Kong Investment Committee. So essentially what I do is I basically take a lot of Western IP and bring them to Asia, and through that process, we help them to go to the region and try to solve problems for them. We look at the region as we're essentially similar to Europe, whereby if we can help anyone to bring the IP over, we're all over it. We're trying to build the sports ecosystem and try to help everyone to have a good time, and at the same time be able to build and make money from it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Clara Chak. Very glad to be here today. And then I have been doing private equity investments for the past most of my career, and then focusing on consumer brands in the past 10 years. So I've been investing in retailers, brands, or distribution network. And then currently I'm with LionRock Capital, and we are focusing on acquiring overseas brands that have their own, well established in their own home country, and then have a good track record there as well, while with limited exposure presence in this part of the world, like Asia/China. And then we think we are able to bring good resources and with the network to help these overseas brands that have limited exposure in China to develop and expand their business in this part of the world. And recently we acquired Hägglöf, which is like the largest outdoor apparel brand in the Nordic region. Because of the Nordic region geography, it's actually a very rough winter, so they're very much performance-driven in their products. And we think this will actually cater to the current demand in China. So we think that we are looking at similar investment opportunities in the overseas market.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the introductions. Since this is the Asia Forum for WFS, let's focus a little bit on the changes and future and past and present, I guess, of sports and sports-related. So to start off, when you guys are looking at investments or IP assets from around the world, what are some pros and cons, challenges and opportunities that excite you and are more specific to bridging to Asia when you're looking at companies? Kit, want to start first?
Sure. I think the most important thing is scalability. I think one of the most important thing we got to remember, Asia is very much like Europe. We consist of multiple countries in the region. We're dealing with different jurisdictions, different laws, different languages. So essentially, if you think about scalability, any one country is very limited. What we need to do is basically to link them all up as a region. I think this is the right time to do it. I think probably over the last 20 years, this is probably the most interesting time where you could actually do this, in part because of technology, in part because there are a lot of Western IPs right now ready to come to this region. Back in the days, you think about most of the biggest IP in the West from the US. US in and by itself is a very big market. You don't really need to go anywhere. Even up to today, I mean, if you look at anyone from the US, to you, this is a region that you're interested in, but you didn't want to spend too much time in because you have to deal with a lot of countries to make it the scale that matters to you. Europe has, in a very unique way, created their own culture. In the football, UK, despite it's a relatively small country, has created its own league, La Liga, right? So if you look at sports in general, globally, the biggest sports is football, but football is not one company. It consists of a lot of leagues around the world. The real, actually, biggest company by revenue in the world is actually NFL, followed by NBA. So if you look at the opportunity in Asia right now, if you can link up the region to scale any events, any sort of IPs coming across, is very, very interesting. Both from not just purely the event itself, like I think everyone, you know, if we want to bring any teams or any sports or any IP to Asia, if you tell them to come to one city, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you go run the math, it's not going to make any sense to make you any money. What makes sense is that you want to come here for a region and let them play 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games, and then your cost will, it's economies of scale. Your cost will come down, your ticketing prices will make it more interesting, more people will be interested, the fan will be a lot more engaged, your marketing will be a lot more leveraged. So that's how we look at it. Essentially, from a pure sports event perspective, it's very interesting right now that you can bring a lot over because a lot of government are actually very interested to host sports events. You name it from Southeast Asia to North Asia, you name any country, everyone is interested. The other part I will always emphasize is that when we think about sports, it's actually not just sports itself. There are a lot of ancillary that are very investable, from fandom, from sports tech, to that of wellness, to that of consumer brands. There are a lot of things that you could do in this region if you don't narrowly focus on just teams and leagues. There are a lot of other options.
Sure. So I come into slightly different perspectives because my focus is mainly doing overseas investments. So actually, I do see a lot of pros and cons or challenges in bringing overseas, whether it's like IP or brands over to China. So say, for example, we invested in a significant minority stake in Inter Milan back in 2019. And then that's a good and bad timing because we just crossed into COVID at that time. So there are a lot of hiccups and a lot of issues in between, not because of the brand or the team or the IP itself, but because of the challenges back then. You know, doing all these, whether events or digital IP or other, you know, other occasions in Asia. And then we acquired a majority stake of Clark's in 21, and that's like the largest UK retailer in footwear. So, and our aim is to, at that time, even though Clark's is really big in Europe, UK, and US, and it has been in China for a long while, but for some reason, it just not able to make it a significant presence there. So we think that we are confident in able to help them to do that. But after, of course, after we went in, then we understand there's a lot of different issues between the culture differences, the supply chain requirements, even for ESG, there are different requirements on ESG for a UK company, for UK products, versus China has their own sets of standards. So these are all different things that you want to cater and hopefully to meet the requirement while at the same time do that efficiently. So there will be a lot of communications and a lot of trust need to be built for the separate, like whether it's UK team, headquarter, or the China team. And on top, like we acquire Hagloff from ASICS back in end of 23, And it's also a different jurisdiction. It's a Sweden-based Nordic brand. So even though it's same as, it's also in Europe, but I'm sure a lot of you understand each, whether it's South, North, or Western Europe, Eastern Europe, they have all different legal regimes, different culture, and different understanding or different standards. So there's, again, another different standards that we need to understand and meet, but at the same time, be able to allow China to build the brand successfully, retaining the heritage, the meaning or the relevance of the brand itself, but at the same time can adapt to the Chinese culture and Chinese standards. So these are all the things that would need a lot of work and effort to go into. And I would say still work in progress. And then excitingly, that we are opening our first stores in Hackloft in this fall winter. So let's see if our effort will come into good results.
Thank you.
I'll just comment briefly on, I agree with Kit and Clara, and I think the examples of actionable, very attractive investment opportunities in the broader sports ecosystem is a lot more prevalent, a lot more scalable, IP is more certain. But when it comes to sports teams and leagues, obviously different jurisdictions across different sports as well. These are also, I think, unique opportunities if you have the right mindset, meaning if you've got a more medium to longer term outlook rather than a more traditional short to medium term perspective in terms of return requirements, and if you have an operational angle or perspective, I think these are really important to have, and with those, you'll be able to find opportunities to invest in sports teams and leagues. And just as an example, I'd highlight that even mature, huge sports leagues, whether it's European football, National Football League, the American football leagues, Major League Baseball, the NBA, et cetera, the governance and the financial transparency in these leagues and how the economics get shared is really, really critical. And so in the US leagues, it's very, very transparent and simple. All 30 NBA teams own an equal share in the economics around global media rights, and all those global media rights decisions are made out of headquarters, right? They're made by the league for all 30 teams, and then all 30 teams get a cut of that. It doesn't necessarily work that way in other leagues or other countries, and so when investing in leagues and sports teams, having a fundamental understanding of how the economics is shared is really, really important, because that will determine the risk-reward profile and the cash flows over a medium to long term in these opportunities. And if you're looking for opportunities in Asia, in sports teams and leagues, some of the sports leagues and teams are still at the early stages where you could help shape the governance and how the economics are shared to position itself for future growth and valuation growth for these sports teams. And so, again, it's complicated to make investments in these sports leagues and teams. It's scarce as well, and you need to have that long term, you need to have that operational mentality and mindset to ensure that you can grow these investments and exit these investments for your investors.
Great. Thank you for all those insights. What I heard through all your answers is, there's a large potential. There's a lot of different countries, a lot of different cultures, even within countries, but also a lot of inefficiencies, it seems like, because, multiple jurisdiction, again, multiple cultures. I would say probably different spending levels that contrast or have a pretty wide range in Asia too. So what type of signals, when you think about leagues and how new leagues engage, or tier 1 leagues engage in Asia, or content and media or brands, what type of signals are you looking for? Or what type of signals hit you and you go, okay, this is the time, or this is definitely not the time? Maybe we go in reverse order. Masaaki?
Sure. I spent 7 years at the NBA, all 7 years focused on global strategies and global investments, but based out of Hong Kong and Beijing. And so I saw firsthand a lot of the positive things, the unique things that the NBA did to grow the sport. It's very simple. Obviously, you want to maximize sponsorships and partnerships to monetize the brand and the games. You want to cut local partners into developing youth academies and growing the sport. All those things are really important. But if you look at the revenues, right, and cash flow of the business, there's a very simple correlation. Whenever there is a Chinese player doing well in the NBA, ratings and dollars spike. And when it's not, it comes down or it flattens out. And so at the end of the day, one of the key things that the NBA focused on was cultivating the next Yao Ming, or having, 10 good players. Doesn't have to be superstar Hall of Fame caliber players. And a lot of that was not just grassroots youth academies, but elite academies. So targeting middle school and high school kids, working with the Chinese national teams to ensure that players continue on that growth profile in terms of skill set, nutrition, exposure to global competition consistently throughout that critical development stage, development age. And so those are areas that the NBA really focused on. And as a result, there's been some successes and some struggles still with the Chinese national team and getting more and more Chinese players into the NBA. But that's been the underlying focus of how the NBA thinks about growing the pie. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. And so that elite academy, working with the Chinese national teams, these are some of the things that are going to be critical, will continue to be critical for the NBA.
So that's almost more like seeding a ripple to create the signal that can feed back into the system later. What about for media?
I agree very much with Masaaki said. Essentially, I'll make 3 points in terms of from an investment perspective. One is in the very, very long term, if everyone interested to invest in teams and leagues, ultimately you have to look to the governments and the schools. It's a feeding system. In Asia, most of the parents are a lot more skewed towards their kids to be academically excellence instead of sports excellence, right? Because of that, the school doesn't have program to feed into a system where you're going to have potential players coming out that could excel. And then the second part of the ecosystem is that you need to have companies and private sector supporting these young kids to actually have jobs and training camps. And until then, you're not going to find a lot of teams that is investable because there's just not enough talents in the market. And there's no right and wrong. Culturally, Asian in general, they're just less skewed towards sports and the Western culture they are. You look at the American system, kids are mandated to go to wrestling classes, gymnastic classes, a lot of the fundamental of how kids should grow up from a physical perspective. Very different understanding of nutrition, right? How do we eat when we grow up? The Americans, like the Europeans, like say, hey, I want to eat a lot of proteins. Like, if you hear, your first thing your parents tell you to eat more rice, right? We're carb-driven. So I don't think there's a right and wrong answer, but at the end of the day, if you look at, despite this is a very, very long segue to where we are right now, but at the end of the day, in the very long run, if you're really interested in teams, these are the fundamentals, right? It doesn't shift. So you look at entire Asia, the teams that actually, that was, in terms of sports heritage, the strongest are in Japan and Korea, because they're very, very much Western-driven these days, the way they feed the system. So that's why it's more investable if you want to look at teams there versus here. Second point I'm going to make is that, with all that said, let's use basketball for example. There are East Asia Sports League. For some of you familiar with the Asian League. There is another 3-on-3 basketball called Vectr in the US. You look at the valuation of these teams, it's probably about 50 to 80 times multiple of one of the cheapest NBA team you can find. They got to be arbitrage possibility within which, right? So you think about it, my personal view is that a lot of these local leagues are undervalued, while NBA is overvalued. Now, when will the bubble burst, it's almost like asking when the stock market is going to correct, right? Nobody knows. But in the very long run, if you're really interested in Asia, I think if you find some good teams to invest in, including the CBA. CBA is what I think I was just talking about. Like, I think if I last checked, the most expensive CBA team is $100 million, right? Versus any NBA team you pick up is probably in the multi-billion-dollar range. They're auctioning the Vegas team, I think is coming out to $2 to $3 billion at the very least. So if you look at investment opportunity, that's another area you can look into. I think the third piece I will talk about is basically media rights. So the unique thing about Asia is there's no major media company that will pay you media rights. Media right feeds the league, and the league feeds the system, right? So because there's no dominant single media company that will pay a lot of media rights fees, as a result, you're not going to get any big leagues. But with that said, I think the opportunity right now is to aggregate viewership. With the advance of like the short, especially social media, the YouTube of the world, you can aggregate a lot of viewership right now where you could drive revenue without going to the traditional means of finding the ESPN, the Fox Sports, the Sky TV of the world. There are a lot of emerging sports if you're interested to look at, like unimaginable, right? You have pickleball, you have paddleball, you have Kings League, 6-on-6 football. You have so many of these emerging leagues that are geared towards the Gen Z, where most of these are broadcasters through YouTube, and you got revenue share from it, so they don't have to rely so much on traditional means of sponsorship. Of course, it's still very important, right? Or have to basically go after a big viewership base of the ESPN or NBC or ESPN or Fox Sports. So I think essentially there are a lot of opportunities in Asia. It depends on where you look and where you find the pockets. Just try not to be too narrowly focused on the traditional big names, because those are usually either overvalued or not available.
So I actually very much agree with both Kit and Masaaki that, of course, we see how attractive or how big these like tier one team or tier one league can be. I mean, we always see like headline news about how packed the stadium is. But when it comes to economics, it's actually not that easy. I mean, we've been there, okay? We've invested and exited one of these tier one teams, and they have their own set of challenges. But we do. I mean, one thing is for certain that we do see government support everywhere, in particularly China, in encouraging a more active lifestyle. It's like a policy to build more football fields, and then encouraging different kind of sports, a more active lifestyle. We like more people going out to outdoor activities. And I visited like Little Red Note. I'm sure all of you know of that. It's like one of the biggest social media platform in China. And they name all their conference rooms after one of extreme sports. So I think it's, I mean, we would like to talk about that. It's not like one size fit all. It's not like the world of one size fit all anymore. There's like a lot of different segments in China. So you're not tackling like 1.4 billion population now, but maybe 1/20th or 1/30th of the population, which is good enough for any one of us. So, I mean, I agree with like whether it's like a local league or a local team. I think it will be easier for us to focus on like these sport events or sport teams at a smaller local scale, where we can also be able to easily control and also manage and also understand the economics there. And I believe that that will be eventually the focus as well.
Thanks for that. I think those are really interesting insights because, you know, like a topic everyone has talked about in this conference, it's technology, digital platforms, social media, you know, Netflix, Prime, buying into sports to broadcast in the US for leagues and teams. This might be a whole new way of reaching your audience, where you can find, you know, the word I'm trying to move towards, instead of regionalism, which I think, you know, Asia is a region, Europe is a region, but, you know, digital as a tool maybe allows, you know, you guys were pointing out, it's like finding your people. You find your tribe, right? You find the 1/20th of China. You find, you know, like China likes to cheer for their own their own players, and hopefully, more Asian players. We got a pretty good popular Japanese player in the NBA right now too, right? Recently, to get a little more excitement. So, could you give me some views on like what are the changes and how do you utilize this new platform that can sort of carve up how you view the world a little bit differently versus it's a country versus maybe it's 6 countries, but only people that like outdoors for haglofs or something, for example, or some certain type of content. How do you think about utilizing or changing strategy and opportunity with, the new way digital platforms sort of change how you attack your clientele or your fans? Kit, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, the way that I look at the region is that every country, as you said, like this, there is its own culture, its ecosystem, its legality in terms of its own system. I mean, if you really want to invest in that system, you go bottoms up, right? You basically look at the full value chain of any one sports or any one team. You have to look at how to monetize every segment of the value chain, right? You think about any teams that you have locally. I'm sure there's a fandom. Like the beauty of China, you take any cities, it's easily 10 million people. 10 million people is a country, right? You pick that team, if you know how to build them, monetize them, just between fandom and building a player and building a tech around them to basically use them as your wellness ambassador. Build your supplements, right? It's so easy to do all of that, but because we traditionally, when we think about sports, we think about the team, who is the hero of the team, then, yeah, I mean, they are not popular, but it doesn't mean that you can make money from them, right? So if you really want to spend time thinking about, pick the players, right? What is the diet? Why is this person so tall, right? What makes them look so different, right? You could build supplements around them and start selling them. You could build sports tech around them. There's sports tech company all around the world. We invest in one called HyperIce. We did a crossover with Nike, sort of massage shoes that you could have heat and everything. You could have brought that brand over there. You would all of a sudden help this company generate at least $5 to $10 million of revenue. Instead of attacking the whole country, you could attack a sub-segment of a little city of a country, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of ways to make money if you really look at the value chain. If you want to narrow it, say, I only want to do apparel. I only want a team. I only want to do narrowly, they're going to sell how many tickets and sponsorship. Yeah, you're not going to get that because you're not going to get the viewership, right? But if you use that properly, there are a lot of things you could build around them. Again, at the end of the day, I mean, I love the word tribalism, right? At the end of the day, sports is a healthier way of going to war, right? Countries go against each other, cities go against each other. Without going to violence, sports is a replacement of that to compete in a very healthy way. If we use it properly, it's a human spirit of rooting for your own team, rooting for your hometown, and you could build a lot around that. You build community, you build viewership, and you can make money along with it. That's what makes sports interesting.
I agree. 2 of my favorite teams are cultish like that, and I will speak up to people I don't know in the middle of the world. If I hear something bad said about my teams, I will say something to them. So totally agree about the passion and spirit. Maybe Masaaki?
Yeah, I'd add on. So one example would be, as it relates to regionalism, tribalism, there's a new basketball league called AUBL, backed by Jota and Blue Pool and others. It's Asia-Pacific college teams competing against each other in a March Madness type of a format. And the beauty there is, and I think if you pick out and highlight how we're different across countries or across universities and celebrate that difference, as we're all different people, but we love basketball, right? We love being student athletes, and we want to compete, and we want to compete on these grand Asia-Pacific, regional scale stages that we don't usually get a chance to do. Celebrating that and showcasing that has been a key driver of the success so far. And a lot of that also is storytelling around that. And so not just a Korean college student versus a Chinese versus an Australian versus like, it's about getting into that background and highlighting some of the differences, but again, highlighting that underneath it all, pretty much all collegiate basketball players, wherever you're from, have similar challenges, similar issues, and share the love for the game. And so that storytelling, if mined properly, is rich with content, and there's a lot of great messaging that comes out of that, and a lot of support from fans around that as well. And so I think it's an opportunity to harness differences, and something that I think as this region tries to get more focused on monetizing, so whether it's specific sports leagues in Japan or China, coming together more and creating both inventory of content and IP and celebrating that, I think will be an important part of growth in this region.
I mean, it's true. It's nothing like watching an amateur athlete that loves the sport and full tackle, jump through a crowd for the ball versus certain higher paid leagues that may not do that until it matters a little bit more, right?
So on top of what Masaaki and Kit talked about, I think I totally agree also with Alan that technology changes all that. With AI coming in, I mean, we heard a lot about how YouTube or IG, Facebook using AI to recognize and pushing videos to all of you after your search. Actually, I mean, China, Little Red Book, or Douyin, or Taobao, Tmall, they're all doing the same. So, I mean, maybe even more so. So they can have record, I mean, your footprints is everywhere. So they have record of whatever post you liked, or whatever post you looked at, or whatever comment, feedback you made, and they have, statistics on all of that. So, I mean, aside from looking at local leagues or local teams, I think on the marketing and promotion side, we don't look at those super, famous or tier one celebrities anymore. But whether it be Clark's or Hagloff, we're actually looking to use those more local or influencers that people feel more relevant to. It can be just the girl in your class, or the girl next school, the school next to you, or the young basketball player in your team that won in a local college league, and these people are actually, we feel like, can be more relevant to the consumers, and can be more accessible because they're like my neighbors, right? So if they're wearing this set of outfit, then I think I can do the same too. So rather than some K-pop singers wearing total outfit in these luxury brands that I feel very distant to. So I guess not only something that we aspire to, but something that is relevant to us will be very important in the storytelling. So we see more and more of that kind of strategy. Rather than spending all the money to one super KOL, we may spend the same amount of money, but to 10 different local influencers. And we find that actually it's more useful and be able to easier monetize the influence. But of course, that's also, I mean, I'm talking about also like smaller brands, smaller niche brands that will be using this kind of strategy. If you're talking brands that like big brands that are selling everything, then they have a different type or different set of strategies. But I think we are now at a time, because of the help of technology, that you can be very creative and still, with a limited budget, can still be as successful. So these are all the things that we are constantly thinking about how to achieve all these results with the means that are available.
Okay. I think, again, to summarize, or what I think I've observed is we're talking about engagement, technology helps that. And at the end of the day, engagement is about monetization, I would say, for leagues, for teams, for brands, content. Everything is about monetizing. So we dig a little deeper. Would you guys mind sharing a little bit of So what type of deals, what type of investments, what type of assets are you guys actively looking at right now that excite you and that make you feel like has room and space to apply into Asia Pacific as a whole, or particular countries? As we know, like certain countries in Asia are sort of their own markets. So what type of stuff are you guys looking at right now that are taking calls at night, doing due diligence about to see if there are any checks are written? Masaaki?
Well, I guess based on my background and a big believer in leagues and teams, there are definitely opportunities in Asia Pacific. Obviously, all the headlines that we tend to see are capital from this part of the world investing in European or US sports, and that'll continue. But at a certain point, as Kit highlighted, where valuations are today, there's going to be a point where people are going to start re-looking at opportunities in Asia Pacific where valuations are much lower, although the risks are obviously are more meaningful. And so it's going to take a different type, it's going to require a unique type of an investor who's willing to be more operations focused, who's willing to help drive the growth in a nuts and bolts way, rather than just write a check and kind of sit back, sit courtside and enjoy those investments. It's going to be an operational an investment. But whether it's sports leagues across baseball, basketball, soccer in Japan, Korea, China, all pose different sets of risks reward, but I believe those are some really unique opportunities. Australia as well, and that's where you're closest to the IP, if not the owner of the IP. And based on my background at the NBA, I see the leverage and I see where that power is. Obviously, we've seen lots of media distribution businesses leveraging technologies. Some have done incredibly well. Some have struggled. But one of the reasons why you struggle is because media rights valuations have gone up so much. It's much better to be on the IP owner side, is my simplistic perspective. And so I'm a big believer in opportunities in Asia Pacific across leagues and teams. And again, with an operational mindset that they're going to have to be a little bit more of a fixer-upper and probably more of a medium to longer term outlook.
Okay. Maybe we'll go to Clara next about brands and consumers in you're going at their wallets and pocket in a different way. So, what type of brands, what type of themes are you guys looking at when looking at acquisitions of consumer brands?
We actually do see a very good fit in overseas brands, whether it's in US and Europe, over to China, because we see China as a stage that they are now, it's not just, we don't just call them one middle class, but rather we see a lot of different sub-segments to that class. And people are trying to, don't dress, the same brand all the time, but rather finding not only brands, not only like apparel, footwear, but being furniture or everything in your life, like that can sort of like identify themselves as someone different, individual, to show that like I'm at this level, so I can do what I want to do, and I'm different. So we see actually a lot of opportunities, and you see like Anta, one of the largest domestic sportswear company in China. They're doing a lot of acquisitions. They can always develop their own brand, but they still prefer doing acquisitions because we see together, a lot of value in all these different brands in Europe and US, where they have not only the uniqueness in their products, but rather the story, like Masaaki said, or the relevance, meaning behind the brand. The background, like they are from like a rough, tough environment in Nordic region, be it, or a artistic environment in France or Italy. So they all have their own different meanings or relevance behind. And we see that these are all very much appreciated by consumers, whether in China or Southeast Asia or even Japan and Korea. And so we like to bring these brands. We actually very much appreciate that we have a chance to acquire ownership of these brands, and then bring them over to China, and then showcase all these heritage and uniqueness to the Chinese consumer. But at the same time, be able to adapt to the Chinese environment. The same dim sum you eat in China, in Hong Kong, will be different from Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and definitely will be different from UK or US because of the different culture and different maybe ingredients available. So we will have to understand that we will need to do the same adaptations while keeping the more or less similar ingredients, but more so is the same relevance behind. So these are the investments, opportunities, and the requirement that we have to be able to succeed. And we see a lot of those now, and I think with people coming in from everywhere, I think we are getting to better understand the cultural differences, and I do see a lot more collaborations or working together in time.
Kit?
We focused on two areas. Our thesis is two. One is the breakdown between entertainment and sports. We are a big believer that at the end of the day, the ultimate demographics that are actually spending on sports and entertainment is very similar. Take, for example, basketball is very close to hip-hop music. So you look at a lot of sports events in the West already basically do both, because you can actually make more money if you combine those two. Take NFL, which is an extreme example. The midtime show is spending tens and $20 million, $30 million, $40 million just to produce a show. And you can make a lot of money from it from a viewership perspective, beyond and on a game itself, right? So same thing, I do see that a lot of things happening here where a lot of sports event could be combined with a music event. You can sell substantially more tickets, more sponsorships, and your return on equity is going to be substantially higher because your cost is about similar. Right, there are certain events in Hong Kong even that have been done very, very successfully recently. The other thesis is really about licensing. Licensing is probably one of the lesser and less sexy part of sports. There are a lot of brands, especially Western IP, that are under-monetized here, where you don't need the players. All you need is images and a brand, like something like this, right? So you could take anything and you keep licensing them. You can sign contracts with apparel companies, you sign contract with stationaries, you can sign contract with shoes or crossover with whatever you want to cross over. You could double and triple a lot of these revenue stream without having to rely so heavily on the players or on the sports brand itself. So I think at the end of the day, one thing we always remind ourselves, we're selling a lifestyle. We're actually not selling a certain product. We're not selling football. We're not selling basketball. You're selling a certain lifestyle to a certain consumer that they aspire to. How a football player actually wears, how a basketball, what sneakers a basketball player wears, what clothes do they wear, what drinks do they go after, what liquor do they go after. To us, it's an ecosystem investment. So we find the right brand, the right IP, we look around the ecosystem and invest around the ecosystem. That's our thesis.
Okay, so with one last point to wrap everything up, maybe 1 point from everyone, maybe including myself, of other than the good stuff, the opportunities. It's hard to teach people to win for sure, but it's easier to teach people to not lose for sure. So what would be your one major point or advice that you would give for people entering Asia as a market? Like, what is the obvious hole? Like, don't step into that. Like, what would be your warning, advice, comment? Kit, we'll start with you. Last point from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, one advice is patience. Every country you go to, you're bound to have problems. There's just so many countries, so many jurisdictions to deal with. Just be very, very patient, study it, understand the risk before you go in. It's just reality of this region. There's just so many countries, so many policies.
they're actually the same theme that we've been, going through all these this past 40 minutes. Like, and it's not just investing in Asia, but for us, like for my experience in investing, acquiring overseas brands, that's more to put yourself down. I guess that's to rather than being me first, to understand where all this coming from, what's the background, and then it will help. I mean, be patiently to solve or resolve all the issues, differences, and then help working together. So I think that's being able to understand each other is the key to be able to work together eventually.
Masaaki?
Yeah, obviously echo Clara and Kit's perspective. Again, I'm biased because of my time at the NBA. I think another piece of advice, especially for sports teams and leagues, is be incredibly aggressive with a commercial mindset. And so one of the amazing things that the NBA did was the NBA carved out the China business, sold a minority stake to local investors, including Bank of China, China Merchants, Li Ka-shing Foundation, et cetera, Hony Capital, created a board and drove the business with very, very specific financial metrics and return profiles that they were after, and then incented the management team to go after and achieve those results. I think that type of aggressive professional mindset, and by the way, the NBA raised $200 million by selling that minority stake, where the sole purpose was not to kick it back up to the owners, it was purely primary shares, where all the money was going to be used to grow the China market. And so I think that type of aggressive corporate mindset, investor return-oriented mindset is regardless of the scale, is an important way to attack markets here in Asia Pacific that are definitely challenging.
Thank you. I would wrap that 4 points. It's like, be aggressive, be open-minded, be sensitive or more specific towards different people and different places. And my point would be, Asia is not a thing. It's a lot of different places combined. So there's no, after we talked about Asia for so long, there's no Asia mindset. You have to pick your spots. Everything's different. Everyone's a bit different. But thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for all your insights. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good tips from our guests and also our speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you.